All right, welcome everybody. So just to remind all of you, I did write a book about my time living in China for 4 years. You can see it here in my hand, but also you can find the link to it in the description. It is on Amazon. And one of the things I covered in my book is censorship. And many Americans seem to think that people in China, they are afraid to talk in real life. But my classroom experience did not reflect that. Students could discuss a range of issues freely. I even showed YouTube videos in class, using a VPN, of course. And many Americans seem also to think that posting the wrong thing online in China means they're going to get arrested, but reality is more complicated, and that's what we'll understand today. So many Americans imagine that in China, people are constantly afraid to speak because they could get arrested for saying the wrong things, and that there's total in-person surveillance in case somebody happens to say the wrong thing. But what actually happens most of the time in China is that censorship is mainly online. So just think of it like a very strict moderator. Posts disappear. Comments don't show. Accounts get limited or shadow banned. And serious punishment usually happens when a post goes viral that the government does not agree with, or people. They try to organize others around sensitive topics to protest. Also, when a topic crosses political red lines, then somebody gets in trouble. But for most people in China, most of the time, their content simply gets erased, not their life. So why does China run censorship in this way? So to understand that, you have to look at history. So we have to realize that censorship has existed in China for over 2,000 years, a very long time. So some examples here. China's very first imperial dynasty, the Qing dynasty, the first emperor burned books he did not agree with. He buried scholars alive that he did not agree with. Also, you have, even later in Chinese history, you have in the Ming, in the Qing dynasties, we have this government organization called the Censorship, and they monitored other government officials and they suppressed ideas seen as destabilizing. And that is because Confucian orthodoxy emphasized hierarchy, loyalty, and social harmony. And this logic continues into the modern CCP era. So the Communist Party builds on the same logic, stability, social harmony, and the survival of the government. And methods in censorship are now much more advanced. They now include AI filtering, the Great Firewall, and millions of censors watching online posts. And under Xi Jinping, the intensity and scale of censorship in China has actually increased. It is stricter than earlier periods in the People's Republic of China. So from an American perspective, of course, this level of control can still feel oppressive, but actually reality is nuanced. So when I was teaching, I noticed that some textbook sections were entirely redacted, but yet students could still discuss the topics freely. Also, using a VPN, we could even watch YouTube videos in class. So censorship in China, it operates quietly, it influences content, and it doesn't really immediately punish people. So this balance of subtle control and everyday freedom is exactly what I experienced firsthand. It shapes what people actually see and do in China. And so we have the Great Firewall in China. So the Great Firewall, it blocks many foreign websites like YouTube, for example, Google, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, ChatGPT. The list goes on, but China also has its domestic platforms like Weibo, WeChat, Douyin, the Chinese version of TikTok. They're all monitored and they also self-censor. So think of it like the strict moderator quietly reviewing everything online. Posts disappear if they cross the rules, but for most people, life goes on. So, VPN, so virtual private networks, they let users access blocked websites. Also, most people in China do not get in trouble for using a VPN, but the government makes it harder to access and use VPNs. So in class, I used a VPN to show YouTube clips for discussion. Also, though, most ordinary citizens in China generally don't rely on VPNs, and censorship still shapes what's visible. So, content, generally in China, often disappears quietly rather than triggering arrests. It's about more subtle control versus overt control. So, and this connects to my classroom experience. Students, they can explore ideas beyond redacted textbook sections. So the system, generally speaking in China, it shapes what's visible without everybody noticing. So this balance of subtle control and everyday freedom is exactly what I saw firsthand, which shaped how students learned and discussed ideas in Wuxi. And of course, censorship actually does exist worldwide. China is not the only country to censor things. Far from it. Many countries restrict information in some way. So textbooks might be edited to present a government-approved version of history. Social media platforms moderate or remove content that is political, violent, or sensitive. Also, laws sometimes punish speech critical of government, though usually less pervasive and encompassing than in China. Also, some Western countries might block extremist content, and authoritarian governments often limit political discussion online. But what makes China different exactly is its scale. Over 1 billion internet users with millions of posts monitored daily, also in China. Nearly all of social media, search engines, and news sites are affected by censorship. But as far as I can, forcing censorship in China, it's mostly quiet removal of content, shadow banning, and algorithmic filtering with legal consequences only for high visibility cases. So this combination of technology, scale, and intensity creates a system unlike most other countries in the world. So while other countries practice censorship to some extent, China's combination of scale, technology, and historical continuity creates a system that is both subtle but also extensive, which is exactly what I experienced in my classroom and online in China. So anyway, some key takeaways from this video is that censorship in China is subtle, but at the same time pervasive. But most people, they live their daily lives without serious consequences for online posts. Also, my discussions in class, they were open. And VPNs let us explore more on certain topics. Also, remember, this approach to censorship in China has deep historical roots, prioritizing stability and social harmony, but now it's been amplified very much by modern technology. So, of course, from an American point of view, the system can feel restrictive, even if enforcement is mostly quiet. Just remember, it's like a strict moderator quietly shaping what people can see in China. But seeing this firsthand changed how I understand China. It's not just restriction, it's a system designed for stability and control. And I did write about these experiences during my 4 years living there in this book. So, what surprised you most about censorship works in China? Or do you have personal experience with censorship in China? I would like to know. So thank you everybody so much for watching, and I will see you for the next video.